Here it
Perfect.
is.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, well, thanks so much, Sarah, for being here. We are so thrilled to have you and everyone who is attending. We are beyond just bamboozled that we had so much RSVPs. I think we were over 140.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. Lots of main event vibes here. So yeah, we're thrilled to have you. So we are the LA, San Francisco, and Seattle Ladies That UX chapters. We wanted to host this amazing event for all of you attendees on all things career strategy and how to maybe unlock your UX career potential. So next slide, please. And so a little bit of our agenda today, we're just going to do a quick about us, go over our code of conduct and a speaker intro, and then, the main event fun stuff. So we will head on to the next slide. And as I mentioned, we've got 3 chapters here. We did a little West Coast showstopper here. So we have the LA chapter, which is myself. I'm a co-lead and I'm a senior UX researcher. And I'll hand it off to Nicole.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole from LA, co-lead, also UX researcher too, and I will pass it off to Coco.
Hey everyone, my name is Coco, also chapter co-lead. I currently live in Santa Monica and I am a design thinking strategist for Blink UX. I will pass it to Zayan.
Hi, I'm Zayan Sparrow. I am head of UX for a startup called Sunshine in Palo Alto. And I'm going to pass it to Shell.
Hi, I'm Shell. I'm with the San Francisco chapter. I'm currently a student pursuing my master's in HCI, and I will pass it over to Prabha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Prabha. I'm part of the Seattle chapter. I'm a UX designer who graduated from my master's a year ago.
Awesome. Well, here we're all here, and thank you all for being here. We have just a few community standards and participation guidelines. Effective communication is something that we all love. And so for those of you who are attending, if you could please mute your microphones unless you want to come off during Q&A, we'd love to hear from you. That would be amazing. And we have more detailed information regarding our code of conduct around being inclusive and always just upholding diversity as well as inclusivity. And our privacy and respect. It's a wonderful and inclusive environment, so we want everyone to be comfortable and feel that they can chat or hang out or ask any question, no wrong answer. And ultimately, if you want to learn more details about this conduct, you can click that link right there and we'd be happy to send it to you. So let's check out the next slide. And our main event, I think while we're all here, is Sarah is with us today. She's the founder of Career Strategy Lab, and she has been in the UX space just dominating and being an amazing evangelist of the discipline for quite a long time. And she's been featured both on Forbes, Fast Company, Insider, Fox Business, and many more. And she's got lots of links. We'll definitely be sharing those in the chat as well as our own socials from each chapter to move forward. But let's go ahead and kick it off. Sarah, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited that we could kind of maximize all the chapters and get everyone together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's check out the next slide. Perfect. Okay, so our first sort of topic of discussion or panel questions we'd like to look into are really digging into what I think many of our attendees are very interested in, the UX job market. How might we go about leveraging this as a tool, as well as what it means to have our professional brand or even just our voice as UXers out there in the land of the internet
Yeah.
be sort of recognized. So my first question would be just, what is your current kind of temp check on the market right now for UX?
For the job market, yeah. I mean, like many of you, I saw this dip last year. We all experienced it. And around last summer, I wrote a few articles around the idea of these layoffs are primarily focused in the tech industry. So think like FANG companies, right? Or whatever word we're using these days. And my advice was really, let's open our eyes and broaden our options a little bit and look beyond the tech industries, because I've seen so many people in my career coaching programs get hired at like large banks like JP Morgan, Fidelity,
Right.
Wells Fargo, thinking about other industries like healthcare. We're seeing a lot of hiring in those types of companies. So health tech, health insurance, healthcare, electronic records companies, all of that. And I think travel is probably another interesting one to pay attention to. But even though there's layoffs happening in tech industries, I think if you can look outside and honestly maybe drop your ego, if your dream is to work at a FANG company, maybe just put that on pause until things kind of shift a little bit.
Absolutely. Yes, I totally agree. And I was curious, like this sort of shift in tech, how do you think that that's affecting the way people might leverage professional networks or our technology, things like LinkedIn or other sort of job accessible tools?
Right. You mean leverage these for finding opportunities, essentially?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, love it or hate it, I think LinkedIn is a very strategic place to be hanging out if you are actively looking for a job right now or plan to. I mean, I know there's a lot of noise on there, but when you think of like the people on the other side of hiring, the recruiters and hiring managers, a lot of them are hanging out on LinkedIn. So when you are thinking of networking and relationship building, the thing that's really important to think about is, where are the people hanging out that I need to become more visible to right now? So I think LinkedIn, I think other UX and product related groups, whether those groups are on Facebook, love it or hate it, Slack groups, Discord groups, LinkedIn groups, etc. I think it still plays a really big role. And I don't want to get ahead of this discussion, but do we want to go into like strategic things we can be doing on LinkedIn to kind of increase our visibility?
Absolutely. You were a call and an answer right there. That was my next question. What might be some strategies or ways in which we could leverage or use LinkedIn to kind of get that findability, that ability to be seen and perhaps even stand out in our niche discipline or even skill set?
Yeah, so I really look at LinkedIn as a web page, and you need to search engine optimize your LinkedIn profile. Because at the end of the day, LinkedIn is a search engine, right? I mean, yeah, it's a social network, but the people who are doing hiring are on LinkedIn searching for candidates like you. So, how do you increase your visibility on LinkedIn? Number one, I think you have to have that profile optimized, just like you SEO optimize a web page. And so as you optimize it, what I really mean is be adding words, phrases, etc., that relate to the job you want to get next. And there's a few really important parts of the profile. That section right below your name, I call it the headline. I think that's the formal name for it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's really important because, I see all of you connecting on LinkedIn right now, and I hope you're paying attention, but if you do have LinkedIn in another tab right now, you'll notice that text below your name, it appears not just on your headline, but like if you comment on a post, it says your name and then it says your headline. And it says it in the right-hand column for the little recommendation sections. And in the search results, if you search for UX researcher and you get a bunch of UX researchers, has your name, photo, and the headline. So that piece of content is so important. Then the about section, and obviously, like in that work history, it amazes me how many people don't take the simple step of just repurposing their resume bullet points for each part of that work experience. And what that's doing is it's adding more content to your profile that, if written well, could help increase your visibility when people are searching for you. There's two other things I'll go over really quick. Feel free to interrupt me.
Right. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, ride the wave. That's perfect.
The other thing, the open to work, I know, you could find arguments for or against turning on open to work. And my perspective is, like, if there is a tool available to you to increase your visibility to recruiters and hiring managers, use it. I mean, I'm sure there's a hiring manager out there that would say it makes you look desperate, but I don't think they're the majority. I think maybe they're just trying to get more eyeballs on their LinkedIn posts or something. I don't think it makes you look desperate or anything like that. Now, there is this setting on the open to work where you can only make that visible to recruiters and hiring managers. So if you're worried, like your current boss or colleagues might see, know that that is available. And then the last tip I'll give regarding this is, if you're actively or planning to be searching for a job, okay, actually there's two tips. Number one would be follow the companies on LinkedIn where you want to apply and people who work at those companies, because that, whether you follow them, the companies and the people, that gets factored into this part of the LinkedIn algorithm that decides whether or not you may get featured as, or sorry, you may get spotlighted as a candidate in this part of LinkedIn called LinkedIn Recruiter. And if you just Google LinkedIn Recruiter Spotlight, you'll find LinkedIn help articles about this if you want to like go really deep. So that's really important. And then the other thing would be being very mindful about what you are posting on your LinkedIn profile. Like, we have a bunch of researchers here. Great. If I was looking for a research job right now, I would be posting research related topics on my LinkedIn. Maybe I listen to a podcast about research and I post a link to that podcast and just one, two, three takeaways, or maybe I use some new research software or tried out a method. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with posting on LinkedIn because they feel like they have to write these pristine articles or something. And it's more about like frequent quality posts and not the length of the posts. So I'll leave it at that because I know that was a lot.
All good gold nuggets. We love it. Sprinkling and dusting the wonderful things. That's amazing. So it sounds like search engines, like SEO, like having some of these moments in your LinkedIn profile really coming to head benefit you like multifold, because it's hitting in search, it's hitting in ability to be seen by recruiters, as well as like even commenting, your engagement and interaction. It kind of brings attention to that. So I absolutely love it. That's amazing.
And I'm glad you mentioned commenting, because I think like the LinkedIn comments are kind of a lost opportunity for a lot of people. So many times you just see people comment, cool, neat, thanks, like these one-word answers. And if you just take the time to write one or two sentences or just something more than cool or thanks, you might actually spark a conversation with someone. And then maybe next thing you know, you're going back and forth, and then you decide to take it to like the DMs on LinkedIn. And then like you made like a new acquaintance, or you nurtured that relationship. So I think it's another thing to pay attention to in our just quick one word reply culture.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gain the, not only, I mean, it's like virtual rapport building in many ways. when you make that sort of connection. Or I've often found that like if something really touches me, or like there's a company I love, the Female Quotient, and oftentimes they post like amazing content. And so, something could really be moving, but when you comment, like someone else could that really resonated with them. And then you, like you said, that pattern really comes forward. So that's
Yeah, definitely.
so in terms of that, it's kind of a form of networking. Could we unpack that in terms of maybe some top tips outside of leveraging comments, really leaning in that virtual rapport building? Are there any other things that you'd recommend for networking in LinkedIn once you've kind of got your search engines going?
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that I think can be applied to LinkedIn and elsewhere is leveraging the power of LinkedIn groups, or Facebook, Slack, what have you, because let's say you are actively looking for a job right now. The benefit of posting in a group or community is that in one post, you're able to get the eyeballs and opinions and maybe connections of multiple people. So it's a great leverage of your time. And I know some people might be like shy about, I don't know, asking questions about the culture of a company they want to apply to, or about someone's previous experience at a company. And some of these groups I've noticed give you the ability to post anonymously. I know Tech Ladies on Facebook does that, and I forget the other ones. So maybe be on the lookout for that. If you're shy to ask a question for whatever reason, find communities where you could maybe post anonymously. And then the other thing I'd say concerning networking and relationship building is really, like, so many people focus on the size of network and things like that. And I know at one point LinkedIn kind of gamified that, and they tried to get you to, I think it was 500 connections. And I think a good mindset shift is really thinking about focusing on quality of relationships, because like if you need a job and you put a message on your LinkedIn and 0 people reply or comment or anything, that kind of says a lot about potentially the quality of the relationships, like whether or not people even know what you do or care about you and things. So I would say, better to have 50 people who actually know things about you that can help you versus 500 people that are just kind of that ghost you if you post something.
Absolutely. I agree. And again, like that notion of when you stand out or when you make that connection, like you're going to get thought of, like, oh, I saw this and that's so crazy. Like actually one of the co-leads, Nicole, her and I met virtually through
Oh, wow.
like online learning. And then now we're here.
Yeah.
So that's just fantastic. And so this notion of like, again, kind of this idea of virtual rapport building and networking, and kind of like casting that net out, because every move is strategic in many ways, as much as it can be authentic. And so I was curious, I myself do a lot of skills research. I work in ed tech, and we're very, very interested in durable 21st century skills. How important do you think these are in the job sort of market search within the UX community?
Do you mean the skills of like networking and posting and things like that?
Well, I would say more so like even soft skills, things like collaboration, effective communication, creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the market is, we all know, quite competitive. And I think if you can put your soft skills like in the spotlight, in every interaction, like if you work with marketing people or even in UX, we sometimes use this phrase like the touch points, whether it's sales touch points, marketing touch points, experience touch points, right? And I always say kind of the experience that people have with a product, and in this case, the product is you, let's say, the experience and first impression that they have is really the sum of all those touch points. And so every email you send, every phone call, every comment, every private message on LinkedIn with a recruiter or something, those are all, forming that person's analysis and opinion of you, as a potential candidate, if it's a recruiter or hiring manager. And so I think being very mindful and, more aware of the importance of how you present yourself, very, very important. And then, that translates to obviously your resume, your portfolio, etc., because so many people just don't apply the same like content strategy of a portfolio, of a resume, or the literal usability of a resume and portfolio. And so just being mindful of how all of those details can really make or break whether you get an interview or not.
100%. Yeah, it's all a calling card in many ways. Always be
Yeah.
closing. So
Yes, I love that. Yes.
certainly. So I mean, like, I think that it really just it seems like it makes a lot of sense to obviously, consider every step that we make at the chessboard of life, the professional game, however you want to refer to it. But this idea that we're being very cognizant of how we're applying ourselves, both in the professional landscape, the UX discipline, and even personally, how that might transcend. I was interested earlier on, and we can kind of transition into a new topic, but this idea of UX, coming into that role and this kind of discipline from other sectors, whether you're from health and care, or, sort of you've worked maybe more in customer service, or maybe you're just a recent graduate, you're coming from different disciplines and you're finding UX. I wanted to kind of hand that off to Diane, and she's got some wonderful questions for you.
Awesome. Hey, Diane.
It's sorry, it's Zion. So it's like Diane, but with a Z.
Okay. Got it.
Sure.
Diane, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So again, just wanted to ask you, why do you think UX is such a popular choice for career switchers?
From what I've heard from people in my career coaching programs, whether they were previously occupational therapists, teachers, attorneys, who else do we have? More branding people. I think what I've heard from them is the flexibility, teachers, for example, and nurses, even my sister's a nurse, and I think the appeal of more flexible potential hours and work location, etc. That's very appealing, I think, too. Unfortunately, for many people who maybe worked as teachers or nurses, they realize how, underpaid potentially they were. And even if they are so passionate about health and education, looking at the long term, they realize, unfortunately, maybe this is not the best financial move. And I think it also kind of attracts people who just are very excited about learning and creativity and technology, and maybe people who just kind of were in positions where they kind of felt bored or like at a plateau. So that's what I've heard from the people like front lines in my program as to why they're switching over into user experience.
I mean, I agree with you with the drive to learn new things and very into tech, because that's what I loved about it. But I was never a career switcher. I was always been in UX, but I see that. And then you mentioned earlier that there is this lull of hiring when it comes to Hmong companies, but we should look at companies that are outside of tech. So what industries, like you mentioned health, finance and stuff, but what industries are hiring the most for UX roles? And what are your thoughts about looking at startups or smaller companies, not Wells Fargo, not JP Morgan, but the up and coming fintech stuff? So
right. So I think, beyond the companies, beyond the industries I mentioned, I think another kind of untapped category of companies, let's say, are kind of smaller, maybe more local or more municipal type companies. I've had a few people who ended up getting hired at kind of what's it called? Utility or energy companies. And they had said, you know, this was never on my radar, but I saw it. And then I explored the opportunity, and it actually had better pay than some of the other companies I was looking at. It's local, it's not like a giant company, so maybe the work-life balance might be a little bit better. So I would say, you know, as exciting as it can be to work at a huge company with offices around the world, you may also find more opportunities for balance and potentially more flexible and higher salary at more local or state or municipal levels. So that would be another thing to think about. We mentioned health, we mentioned finance, travel. E-commerce is another one, I think. Like we've all been shopping online for a long time. The pandemic, I think, accelerated that. And I think, you know, anything that allows people to have commerce online or do kind of what would be an example? Like DMV is not the right example, but it's the only one coming to mind. Like service-based companies would be another one, because everyone's trying to go digital, right? So those would be some. And then concerning, let me just refresh my mind of the question. Do I think it's a good time to be looking for jobs at startups right now?
Yeah, just your thoughts on like pursuing startups, because that's, you know, that those are the some of the questions I've been getting is like, oh, is startup safe? Should I go to a startup? What's the environment like at a startup compared to like a big corporation? Stuff like that.
Yeah, so, you know, I did the startup thing years and years ago, and it was exciting, and I got to learn a lot of stuff, and there was kind of like a little bit of risk involved. And so I think part of what I would do if I could do it all over again would think about not just that job I want next, but what do I maybe want 5 years from now, which I know is easier said than done. But I think, you know, some of the cons of startups, and there's plenty of pros, but some of the cons are, you know, that risk. You're taking on a lot of risk, sometimes even financially, if maybe you are offered not as high a salaries you may be able to pursue elsewhere, but you take, you know, stock and things like that. It sounds appealing, but like the odds are really not that high that you're going to come out of that startup with a couple of $1 million or something, right? Let's be real. So I think about like your financial tolerance there. Think about your lifestyle too. I mean, the smaller the startup, potentially the more they're going to want you to work. So be mindful of, you know, what you want your ideal week or day to look like, because that could very much be influenced by the size of that company. Definitely the stage of the company, the success rate of the founders, like what did they do before this? What is their track record? I think these are all things that just a lot of people really don't think about, and you kind of get like shiny object syndrome with startups. However, I did read this article years ago, and I forget who wrote it. I want to say Paul Graham, but I could be wrong. Maybe I can follow up with a link after. But it was this article essentially saying, when you're deciding on your next job, really think about, is this a time to earn, or is this a time to learn in your career? And I'm sure other people have said this also, but I really like that kind of decision tree, let's call it, because it kind of just simplifies a lot of ideas that might be swirling all over in your head, and just step back and say, all right, is this job going to give me an opportunity to earn or learn? And is that what I need right now in my career?
I love that. Yeah, I've had my experiences working at startups, experiences working at big corps, and whatever you just said, especially with the learning and the earning, that definitely resonates. So the other question I wanted to ask, and this is for people, you know, transitioning, right? So, how can their skills, you think, from other disciplines can be leveraged for a UX career? And And on top of that, so like what other sought after UX skills or UX skills in the industry outside of tech? So like what are those skills that they have outside that they can bring into their job search?
Yeah, so for those people switching, you know, the nurses, the teachers, the attorneys, even I had this attorney switching into user experience. And one of the tips I give all of them is consider seeking your first UX role in that industry you're coming from. Because if you're an attorney and this attorney, he wanted to be a user researcher. I said, great. Maybe think about applying to, you know, legal tech or companies that had to do with legal topics or whatever. Because if they're down to a couple of candidates or even 10 candidates deciding who's going to get an interview, you know, if you may have less years of UX experience, but if you have 10 years of experience with the legal profession and you understand, you know, all of those details and compliance and who knows what, they may choose you because it will take them far longer to potentially on-ramp someone who is not familiar with legal, right? Same thing with, you know, ed tech, right, Amanda, or healthcare. Like a nurse could make a lot of sense to get into health tech, even if they only stay for 2 years because they desperately want to get out. It's a good foot in the door. So think about if that would make sense for you. And also, like, it's not just about that experience, it's also your relationships. You know, maybe you have relationships with people at health insurance companies or health tech companies already that maybe you could lean on to get hired as a UX person in those companies. And then concerning the skills, I think the skills that are most valuable and most transferable, and it's so cliche, but I think it really is like about critical thinking, connecting the dots, being able to kind of like be thrown into some topic or industry you know nothing about and be able to kind of just hit the ground running, not because you know anything about that, but because you are good at asking the right questions, not being afraid to be wrong, and like synthesizing all that information to understand a situation. You know, I had these experiences where I worked as a consultant at a UX agency in New York when I used to live there. And I loved it because we'd be working on like something in transportation and then something for the New York Public Library and then something for Dow Jones or investment capital. And like, I didn't know anything about investment capital and stuff back in the day. And I was really nervous going into these meetings. And then I realized, oh, well, as long as we ask the right questions and are not afraid to potentially like sound like we don't know what we're doing, it's all going to work out. So those would be some of the most important skills, I think, in addition to just general business sense, especially like I think UX people have this desire to always, you know, do what's right for the user, which is true. However, you're also at a company that is a business that needs to make money. So in order to get your ideas, you know, through, you also need to look, you can't just have these like blinders on, like the user blinders. You need to take those off and look at it through the lens of like, one lens of your glasses is user and the other is, you know, business. So I know a lot of people don't love to hear that, but that's like the reality of business. Even in my own business, I mean, we have this giant list of things that could improve the user experience inside Career Strategy Lab. And quite often I say, good idea, we're not doing it because there are these other things and these priorities. And if we do that, it's going to take all my time. And, you know, so you have to get comfortable kind of compromising. And to do that, you need to understand business.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially about how UXers really need to embrace their curiosity
Yes.
when they're starting anything. Like it's like, yeah, that's the thing. Like you need to be prepared to be asking questions because yeah, you're not going to know everything. And that's a very good tip. And then also, yeah, about being empathetic about everybody, not just your users, your stakeholders as
Yeah.
well. So it's really, those are the two core things that you really need to embrace as a UX designer. So the other thing I wanted to ask was, how can candidates negotiate around their lack of UX specific experiences during the hiring process?
Yeah, so I think part of the strategy here needs to be looking at your previous experience and identifying the highly transferable skills you do have and shining a spotlight on those in your portfolio, in your resume, in the answers you give in interviews. And so, like, a lot of people think I have not held a job with the word UX in it, therefore I don't have experience. And one example I use from time to time is this teacher that was working with me. They wanted to switch into user research, but they thought they didn't have research experience. So we got to kind of talking on a Q&A call, and turns out they had done a lot of research as a teacher for these curriculum projects they were working on, like curriculum redesigns and something around the student experience. And so I said, okay, well, why couldn't we take the research activities you did for that and turn it into a research project for your portfolio? Because sure, you weren't researching like some digital experience, but at the end of the day, research is research, like, and I'm sure this person could, quite quickly and easily learn how to conduct like a usability test or something. So for people, here tonight who may be in this position of switching into user experience, think about the things you have done in your previous job and what's an example that you could use. Like I just had someone who was an architect. And I said, okay, so you obviously have a lot of design skills. Like, was there some, in their case, research they had done? Or could we kind of go through like the kind of like initial, I don't even know what the right word is in architecture, but like the initial round of designs or something to show, this was the goal of the structure and this is the research we did. And then they had to do research around like the actual land of or plot of land to make sure it wasn't on a wrong angle and all this stuff. So there's a lot of things you can leverage from your past experience.
Those are really all really great tips. I'm going to now pass on to Prabha to talk about the importance of portfolio and career strategy lab.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So a question that I have is, how does the role of portfolio evolve at different stages of your UX career?
Yeah, so I think that, earlier in your career, if you're not a manager or something like that, let's say you're in your first 1 to 3 years or so, recruiters and hiring managers are really looking to find examples and proof that you can do the activities related to your job description, that help make the product. So they want to see more of like the wireframes, the user flows, the maybe parts of design system. If you're in UX writing or content, like actual writing and things like that. And so earlier in your career, it's more focused on like the hard skills of the job, let's say. And then I think as you move along, we are wanting to see an increase in what we talked about earlier, like the strategy, the business analysis, the understanding of how this product is going to impact this part of the business, or this is how, you know, we worked with these stakeholders in sales or in marketing or what customer service, whatever it was. Because as you go further along in your career, I think it's just a natural progression that as you're given more responsibility, you're then expected to expand your kind of business knowledge, and you're given kind of the opportunity to collaborate with people in other departments, kind of own things also. And then of course, you know, if you are more in management and leadership and things like that, you know, oftentimes people in those positions say, well, how do I make a portfolio if I'm just kind of like the conductor and everyone else is doing the work? And I say, well, there's still a story to be told of, like, my team was tasked with this project and this is how I, you know, went about making the project happen, and these are some challenges we ran into, and how you manage the timeline or the budget or the stakeholders and things that came up. So I think you could still, if you're a manager, you know, show some of the deliverables. I don't think it's like lying to show wireframes that maybe you did not create, but I think surrounded by the narrative of like, this is what my team did under my direction type thing. So yeah, that's how I see the portfolio, like at a high level as you go through your career.
So this is a question I'm sure we've all asked ourselves. What makes a portfolio stand out?
Yeah, so let's first start with what makes a portfolio stand out in a bad way. So I would say you have to put yourself in the shoes of recruiters and hiring managers and like have a little bit of empathy for them, even though you might not agree with, you know, their practices all the time, but they are going through literally hundreds of candidates quite often, right? You see the numbers of how many people have applied to jobs and things. And so in order for them to gauge whether or not someone is qualified, you as a candidate need to do more than just show them screenshots of deliverables. Or, you know, I even see people put screenshots of like survey results from SurveyMonkey and just a screenshot of the results and no narrative around it. And so the easiest way to kind of think about this is think of an iceberg, and the top, like above the water, is what you did. That's what most portfolios are. What I did. It's deliverables. What they really want to know is everything under the water. They want to know, for example, if it's a research project, great, you did research. They want to know, why did you do that research in the first place? Like, how did this come to be? Why did you decide on that research method? Why did you want to talk to those specific people, like as you narrowed down your research participants? Even things like what software or tools maybe you used would be great. Was it moderated, not moderated, depending on the method? What did you learn from the research? And also maybe the application, like how did the research inform the next step of, you know, whatever was going on in the project? And most people, though, just in their portfolio say like, next we did a survey, and then there's a screenshot of Google survey results. And if you're in person, you're naturally going to say, okay, well, tell me more about this survey, you know? So that's how you can really make the portfolio stand out, going beyond that what, and, you know, kind of think like a journalist with the 5 W's and how to kickstart your thinking to make sure you don't get stuck in just this like what I did trap.
Hey, you spoke about SEO optimizing your LinkedIn earlier. I was wondering if there's a equivalent for that for portfolios. Have we reached a point where recruiters are running your portfolio through AI systems to determine if you're a good fit? And
that is an excellent question. And to be honest, I have not considered whether recruiters are taking your portfolio and running it through AI, to be honest. And I would say, you know, portfolios, like there's this debate, what format should it be? Should it be a website? So if it's a website, then we can apply that same SEO strategy. But I really advocate to make a presentation, because It allows you to tailor it for each job you're applying to. And I find, and based on everyone that's learned from me since 2017, making a website portfolio, you think it's going to be easy, but it's not always as easy as you think it may be. So for those portfolios that might be a PDF, I don't know if they're really using AI to evaluate them, to be honest. Like in the same way that an applicant tracking system parses a resume, I don't know if there's one for portfolio, but I'm going to ask around and find out. It's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Or maybe you need to go make it.
So, for people who's, what advice would you have for someone to build out their portfolio for real world experience, possibly for beginners who probably only have academic projects on their portfolio?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I am very for including these projects in your portfolio that were self-initiated practice projects, whatever you want to call it. And I think the key to making them stand out is doing what we just talked about, telling us, like, why did you even decide to do this? For example, this one person in the career coaching program, they had some type of hearing impairment. And so they noticed this problem in their life. And as they spoke with others, their peers, of when they were driving in a vehicle, they could not always hear the fire trucks or ambulances or police cars because of their hearing impairment. And so that kickstarted this kind of personal project where they kind of designed this thing that would be in the car that would help alert them if there were emergency vehicles around them. And they went to the point of somehow interviewing like fire people and police officers and things like that to figure out like what might be possible. And I use that example because if that is in your portfolio and you tell me a little bit of the backstory of how this came to be, etc., that alone is communicating like your ability to not just solve problems, but really spot problems. And I think making sure you're telling the story of how you spotted problems or noticed problems in your personal life at your company, I think that really makes you stand out versus someone that just has a project in their portfolio and it's like, I decided to redesign the Shopify or Spotify, here it is, like those personal, the backstory is much more compelling, I think.
Thank you. So I have one last question before we open up the floor for Q&A. Where can people learn more about Career Strategy Lab and the other services that you have?
Yes. So yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, Career Strategy Lab is this career coaching company that I created that really focuses on UX and product people. I will caveat and say we are not a boot camp. So we don't have, Learn UX 101 and all this. We really, really just focus on that point of helping you get all your career materials ready, optimized, job search, etc. So if you want to learn more about that, we have a couple of different programs. We have this kind of flagship 3-month program. And then from time to time, we do little sprints. We're doing a resume sprint right now, and we have a portfolio sprint coming up, I think, in 2 weeks. But if you want to learn more, you can go to careerstrategylab.com/welcome, because we're doing this thing for people who come to Q&As like this. And you'll see on the page, if you wanted to join that flagship 3-month program, we're giving you an extra month in the program. So if you joined for like 3 months, you would get 4 months. So all the details are there. And then there's also links to our podcast and this career roadmap we created and something else that I'm forgetting, but it's all on that page.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I think we have a bunch of questions in the chat.
Wonderful.
And I'll let the people moderating the chat take over.
Yeah, hi. So we're going to go to our QAs now. Thank you so much, Sarah. This is such valuable information. It's been wonderful.
Awesome.
So I think we're just going to head over to QA now. And there has been a question, I think there were two actually I just found from Christine. I don't know if you want to read them, Christine, or you want me to. You could turn off your mic if you want to read it, or I can. And it's about portfolios was one of the questions she had, Christine M. She said, what are your thoughts on creating a UX research portfolio that can be shared more broadly? Where it seems people are asking about UX research portfolios as part of the application process. This is used to be more common for design. In the past, my portfolio was a case study during that interview. So what are your thoughts on creating a UX research portfolio that can be shared more broadly?
I think if you have the time to be creating multiple portfolios, like especially if, you know, it sounds like, Christine, you have experience doing more design and doing research. And so maybe you are applying to positions that might be more just research focused, just design focused, or a hybrid. So if you have the time and energy to make these multiple versions, I think the more tailored and specific your portfolio is to the role you're applying to, the better. However, I would also say in that research portfolio, I still think it's valuable to shine a spotlight on some of your design skills, because, you know, depending on what that company needs, even whether or not it's in the job description, if they see a researcher with design skills, even though design wasn't listed on the job description, they might think, oh, wait, actually, having a researcher that could do some rough designs could be really valuable for our teams. So I see Christine's hand is raised. Maybe.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for that. Yeah, I
Clarification.
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
No, I think like when I used to apply for UX research jobs, they didn't expect a UX research portfolio like submitted on their website, where it was more common for designers. And I'm not a designer. So yeah, so that part. So it's been interesting because now that I'm applying for jobs, I'm seeing more of that, like upload your portfolio. And I'm thinking my portfolio is very much like my case studies that I use in interviews. And it doesn't make much sense if I just post that, you know? So I'm curious, have you noticed that becoming more common, or what are your thoughts about? I mean, it's also difficult because of the whole like NDAs and
Right.
how do I share that information?
I'm curious what you mean by you have this portfolio that you would use in interviews, but you don't think it would make sense to upload. Why is that?
Well, partially, I mean, I have it as a presentation, so like I don't have a narrative around it, except
Okay,
for what I'm talking through in an interview.
got it. Yeah.
And I also think like maybe I'm able to like talk around some of the things that I'm still able to hold my NDA. But if I were to write some of that stuff out, the context I might need to supply might go against my NDAs. So like it seems like it's just such a hard area to create a UX research portfolio that you can just post.
So a few quick answers to like multiple topics that came up. I think with NDAs, I know many of you struggle with that. I think you have to think about what is the level of strictness in that NDA. And I'm not an attorney, so you have to think about this on your own. But, you know, people hear NDAs and they think can never show to anyone. However, there might be a case where, okay, if you blur things out, or if you redact the company name, or you put in fake content, can you talk about it? Or as long as you're showing it in an interview, both versus posting it on a website that is crawlable and searchable for the whole world, maybe showing it in an interview would be acceptable. So I think many of you with the NDA challenges need to kind of think about what might I do to be able to show this. So that's something to think about. Another thing that came up, do I see researchers submitting portfolios when they apply? I mean, we have so many researchers inside Career Strategy Lab, and whether you're a researcher, a writer, a designer, an information architect, whatever, they all follow the same kind of instructions I give them to make a portfolio, because regardless of what you do, the process to explain what you did, tell your story, go beyond the why or go beyond the what is the same. Perhaps there's an opportunity for some of you to have like this portfolio that you use when you are in an interview, versus if you do have things, you know, that you want to only show during an interview, maybe your portfolio that you upload is kind of like a highlight reel or a movie trailer, if we can use that analogy, where you're kind of giving people the short version of what you did and then telling them like, I'm happy to share more in an interview due to, you know, NDA or privacy reasons, or however you phrase it. But I think like, even though like the research portfolio will not be as visually beautiful and have all these screens because it's the nature of research, but you can still tell a very compelling story about this time. Your team was tasked with figuring out, you know, this problem or this hypothesis or validating this part of the product. And you can still make a great portfolio presentation as a researcher, but you just have to realize it's not going to be, you know, bells and whistles and Figma and things like that.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you, Christine, for asking the question. And then I totally agree too. I think that there's a lot of creativity in that storytelling that you can do with research. It's kind of exciting. And Christine, I think you had another question. I don't know about the program that Sarah hosts.
Oh, I see it here. Would any of the programs help if you want to pivot from research?
No, that's good.
To content design or product management? I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Career Strategy Lab, we are not teaching you how to do, say, content design. So we more focus on like resume, portfolio, developing a career roadmap, like a product roadmap for your career, interviews, negotiation, job search, networking, portfolio. I think I mentioned that. So we're not like a company like the UX Content Collective, for example, that is teaching you how to do content design and content strategy and things like that. And we're not teaching you how to do research. We, like in 2017, I realized this gigantic gap with all the boot camps, and that I don't think you can really be great at teaching UX and the whole job search side of things. So despite many people begging me to create a boot camp, I said, we're not doing that. We're only focusing on this, you know, part that comes after a boot camp. Or, you know, even we have people who've been working in UX for 20 years joining our program. So what we do is not just specific to beginners. We have people at all career stages, because when it comes to telling your story and putting yourself out there and getting all your materials buttoned up, like it generally doesn't get easier the further you get in your career. I think it actually becomes harder because you have so much experience and you don't know how to condense 20 years into a portfolio.
May I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to clarify, so like, does your program help people say like, okay, I have all this UX research experience. Now, how can I reword that to create, say, a content design resume?
Yes, assuming you have some content design experience in your past and you just didn't have the job title content designer. You know what I mean?
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. So if it's a matter of like, how do I transition from research to content design and package up the content design I was doing, even though I didn't have, you know, a research a content design title? Yes, we get a lot of that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see more chat.
Do we have any more?
Might be just me. I was asking if we have any more questions. Yeah. Does anyone have any? Does anyone have any more questions before we close? You have such valuable insights, Sarah. So I just want to make sure that our audience gets that, gets to be able to ask.
One more coming in from Dina, I believe.
One more.
And after this,
Nice. Okay, perfect.
respect of everybody's time. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
So should we answer this
Thank
one in
you.
the chat?
Or yes, go ahead.
Did you
Lavina
want that's it.
asked about do you only coach mid or senior level candidates? Do you also work with people who are trying to go for beginner or entry level roles?
Mhm. Yeah, so we work with people in all three of those areas. We call them launchers, switchers, and climbers. And I would say it's probably 60-70% switchers and climbers, and maybe 30% launchers. The beauty of it, though, is that like everyone is all in the same community. And so even though someone may have 20 years of experience and someone may have 1 year of experience, when it comes to like finessing your resume bullet points, you're able to give each other feedback, because at the end of the day, like you're learning from the same material and you can probably see ways to improve each other's, because you all kind of are like working from the same textbook, let's say.
Absolutely. We did have one more question come through. This will be our last one. We just want to be respectful of everybody's time. Is age an obstacle to getting your first job as a UX designer, in your opinion?
So I actually have a podcast about this. If you go to, hold on, careerstrategylab.com/podcasts. Oops, I spelled it right. And then if I search the page, we need to add search to our website. It's on my to-do list. If we find ageism in UX, Sarah Doody, I'll Google myself and find it. But the short of it is, I don't think it is a barrier to getting hired. Sure, you could find companies that are biased either because you're too young or you're too old. However, you probably don't want to work at those companies. And so I think that many companies are probably looking for, I want to make sure I answer the question correctly, because there's the ageism, you're too old and too young. So which end of the spectrum are we talking about? Okay, it didn't specify. So I think there's plenty of companies that would look at someone maybe older and see that as an asset. So I wouldn't be worried about that. And I think if you are on the younger end of the spectrum, I also don't think, yeah, someone said age is a number. And I saw this post the other day, and the gist of it was like, years of experience or age shouldn't matter. What really matters is how do the skills that you have, in your tool belt align with what's on the job description, and whoever best aligns should probably be like elevated in the interview list. But that podcast episode would be great for both ends of the spectrum.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We'll just pop to the next slide really quickly, and just your socials are here. We've added the welcome offer link. It's also
thank
here
you
in the chat a few times. And again, just thank you so much for your valuable time. We so appreciate you. It's such a gift to have you here on the West Coast representing for Ladies That UX.
Yeah.
And thank you to all our attendees that could make it today. We're so grateful for all of you as members, non-members, and we're just thrilled to have you. And let's all give a virtual or off mute round of applause. You all.
Thank you. Yeah, this was awesome. I love talking about all this, and maybe if I'm in one of your cities, I'll connect with you all, and maybe we can like meet up and do a happy hour or something.
That would be amazing.
Or a walk or whatever
We can
sounds
walk,
fun.
we can drink. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Are you planning on coming to Config? Just wondering, because I think a lot of people are.
I
in
won't
this
be
group.
coming to Config, no. My travel plans are on hold this summer because I have really bad sciatica right now, and I can honestly barely walk. So I'm just stuck in my house right now, to be honest.
Oh,
but in the fall, I'm hoping to kind of do a little road trip and road show.
Love it. Well, we're
good.
so we'll be keeping an eye out, and recover soon. Hopefully
Thank
that'll go
you.
well. And
I'm
thank
just
you
so
again.
impatient.
I know. Same.
Thanks, Tara. This was amazing.
Awesome. Well, have a great night,
Thank
everyone.
you so much. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Have fun in
Thank
concert
you.
if you go.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Much.